I was brushing barbecue soot off the porch rail when my daughter told me I had 48 hours to pay her husband's debt or things would get ugly. I said nothing, just watched a jaybird hop the fence like it owned the place. "Dad," Laurel said. Her voice clipped like a cashier closing a till. "Damon owes $53,000. You have it. Transfer it today." I told her I'd spent a lifetime teaching engines to behave and people to think for themselves, and I was done buying lessons nobody learned. She didn't shout. That would have been honest. She just smiled the way a waiter smiles when he knows the soup's cold and he's already decided you're the problem. "Then I'll make sure you pay anyway," she said and hung up. I didn't argue. I packed 2 shirts, 1 thermos, and the tin box with the marriage license, the title to the house, and the key to the storage locker where my life fit on 6 shelves, tools, the flag they handed me at your grandmother's funeral, and a shoebox of letters I still haven't reread. I left the lawn chair set up, coffee half drunk, like I'd be back before it cooled. I locked the front door in Pine Hollow and drove out County Road 6 without telling a soul. When a man my age disappears, folks assume confusion or shame. Truth is, sometimes it's strategy. If you ever need to become invisible, kid, don't run at midnight. Leave at noon. Tell the world you're a creature of habit while you shed the habit like a snakeskin. By sundown, I was in a month-to-month on the edge of Claymont, a dull little motel where the ice machine coughs like an old smoker. I pulled the battery from my main phone, turned on a $30 prepaid, and watched the missed calls stack up in silence. 12 by evening, 26 by dawn, 47 by the time the sun burned the haze off the interstate. Same number each time. Laurel. No messages. No explanations. Just the persistence of a mosquito you're too tired to swat. You probably think I felt guilty. I did. Guilt's cheap, though. It shows up early and leaves before the bill. Responsibility is what stays to wash the dishes, and I was finally letting them do their own. I slept 3 hours, woke to the whine of a truck on the frontage road, and brewed motel coffee strong enough to dissolve a nail. The plan, such as it was, fit on a napkin. Call the credit union from a payphone like it was still 1998. Freeze the accounts. Move the deeds into a trust I drafted but never filed. Then wait. See who panicked, who improvised, who showed their hand. At 9:07 a.m., the motel room phone rang. Rare thing, a landline tremble. Manager wanting a deposit? Telemarketer lost in time? I let it ring twice more and answered. "Mr. Reeve?" A woman said, polite but busy. "This is Claire with Starland Credit Union. We're calling to confirm a wire you requested this morning." I stood very still. "Read me the details." She did. 53,000. Even. Destination account at Blue Meridian. Authorization via the mobile app on a device ending in 68. Voice confirmation at 8:42 a.m. A shiver started at my wrists. "No wire," I said. "No app. Freeze everything." "We already flagged it," she said, efficient as a nurse. "There's also a durable power of attorney on file, added yesterday. I need to verify. There's no POA. I cut in. Not signed by me." She cleared her throat. "The document bears your signature, witnessed by a notary public named J. P. Gladwin." And then she read the name of the agent. Laurel Pike. Not Hart like on her birth certificate. She'd started using Damon's last name again, like a fresh coat of paint over rot. I thanked Claire, and when I hung up the room shrank. They were fast, I'll give them that. It takes a certain kind of focus to convert a father into a revenue stream before breakfast. I shouldn't have been surprised. I taught Laurel how to balance a checkbook on a paper placemat at Clover Diner when she was 12, and she'd placed each number like it meant more than the last. She learned all of it. She just learned it for herself. The prepaid buzzed. Not a call. An automatic alert I'd set up years ago when Damon first started circling her like a hawk with a limp. County Assessor. Title change request received for parcel hashtag page 1138. My house. The paid-off little box on Birch Lane with the peach tree that never produced more than 3 fruits. Stubborn as a mule. They were trying to move it into something called the Pike Family Trust. Cute, quick, sloppy. Now, don't let me moralize more than I need to, but this is a good moment to remember something. Families break in whispers before they ever break in shouts. If you're counting the shouts, you already missed the moment it turned. I didn't call Laurel back. I called the county recorder and told the clerk I'd be in later with ID. Then I called a lawyer in Claymont whose name I knew from a VFW flyer. Francia Odell, nosy as a bloodhound and twice as tenacious. She picked up on the second ring, chewing gum openly into the receiver. Morning. I told her the shape of it. Fake POA, attempted wire, title monkey business. You got your original signature on anything they're using? She asked. They've got something that looks like mine, I said. I don't sign like that on Thursdays. She snorted. Good. Bring your driver's license, the tin box, and your patience. I tucked the tin under my arm and stepped toward the door when the motel TV, which I hadn't touched, blinked to life. The screen threw a news crawl I could read without sound. Local man missing. Elders at risk. Then my name. My picture, too, cropped from a county fair shot. Me holding a pie your grandmother never baked. I turned up the volume. The anchor wore sympathy like new shoes. Pine Hollow police are seeking information on the disappearance of 71-year-old Henry Reeve, reported missing by his daughter, Laurel Pike, who is concerned for his safety. Mr. Reeve may be confused and in need of assistance. Confused. I said the word out loud. Tasted like chalk. You want to know how to steal a man's choices? Start by stealing his competence. Tell the town he can't carry his own name without help. Tell the bank he needs a guardian. Then show them the paperwork you forged in your kitchen between a reheated casserole and a text to your gambling husband. I clicked off the TV and sat down hard on the edge of the bed. Strategy, I reminded myself. Strategy beats outrage. Every day, twice on Sundays. I wrote a list on the motel pad. Step 1, get eyes on the notary. Step 2, freeze the title. Step 3, find out what Blue Meridian is and how far Damon's fingers reach. Step 4, make sure my grandson, no, I haven't said his name yet, and I won't until I know which side the wind blows him to, stays out of splash range. By noon, I was in a strip mall office where Francia kept files stacked like hay bales. She didn't look up from her keyboard. Let me guess, she said. They filed the missing person report to justify the POA. They tried, I said. They also tried a wire. Of course they did. She pointed to a chair with a bent leg. Sign there. We'll put a temporary restraining order on any transfer. She scanned the photocopy Claire had emailed over, the alleged POA, and tapped the signature with one sharp fingernail. Tell me where you sign your like that. I don't, I said. Exactly. She leaned back. So here's the play. We notify the bank and the recorder you dispute the instrument. We file a notice of fraudulent conveyance. And we send a nice letter to your darling girl letting her know you're alive, competent, and extremely litigious. Then you go quiet again. Quiet how? I asked. She smiled with only half her mouth. You vanish in plain sight. Meanwhile, I make them think you're 2 steps behind when you're 3 steps ahead. She slid a document across the desk. Sign a limited POA to me. I'll be the bulldog. I signed because a good dog on your side can change the math of a street you thought you knew. On my way back to the motel, the prepaid rang. Not Laurel's number. Unknown. I answered because sometimes you tug the wire to see who's holding the other end. A man's voice, varnished with charm and cheap whiskey. Mr. Reeve. Damon here. Listen, buddy, there's been a misunderstanding. Laurel's upset. You know how she gets. He chuckled, a rehearsed sound. We can fix this if you stop with the legal theatrics. Come home. Let's talk. I didn't say a word. I let him fill the quiet. People like Damon can't stand silence. It's a mirror they don't want to look into. I mean, think about your reputation, he went on. Old man wandering off, folks worrying, police wasting time. You wouldn't want that. And the house, well, you told Laurel you were thinking of downsizing anyway, right? Papers just set you up for a smoother transition. We're family. We're keeping it in the family. Blue Meridian, I said, soft as a bedtime story. What is it? He exhaled. Caught. A friend's account, he said. Temporary. That friend have a name? I asked, already turning the truck around. past the bail bondsman and the pawn shop with the neon guitar, toward the one place I knew Damon would assume an old man wouldn't think to go. "Look," he said, voice tightening. "We're on the same team." "Good," I said. "Then you won't mind telling me which notary sold you my signature." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loud, with a man counting exits and finding them locked. Then the line clicked dead. I pulled into the parking lot of Blue Meridian Check Cashing and Wire Services. A cinderblock box with bars on the windows and an open sign with half its letters burned out. A tired clerk with a tattoo of a ship's anchor watched me cross the room. "You folks handle incoming wires?" I asked, setting my driver's license on the counter like a chess piece I didn't plan to sacrifice. He squinted at it, then at me, then at the door. "You Henry?" he asked. His hand disappeared under the counter. "Because a woman left something for you just now. Said you'd be by." My stomach went cold and clear. "What woman?" I said, but before he could answer, the bell over the door chimed, and the woman herself stepped in, smiling like she was bringing pie to a church picnic. A manila envelope pinched between two fingers, nails red as brake lights. She looked at me as if we were meeting for coffee, not the opening round of a family war. "Hey, Dad," Laurel said softly. "You really shouldn't have run." And then she lifted the envelope so the room could see the word printed on it in block letters. Warrant. The word warrant hit me harder than any fist ever could. For a moment, I thought it was a joke. One of those cruel little stunts Laurel used to pull when she was 13 and wanted to see how long she could hold my patience underwater. But she wasn't 13 anymore. And she wasn't joking. She walked right up to me, close enough for the perfume to hit. Something sharp and artificial that didn't belong to the girl who used to smell like lavender soap and engine oil from handing me wrenches. I could see the tremor in her hand, though she tried to hide it behind that smile. It wasn't anger I saw in her eyes. It was conviction. The kind that only comes when you've convinced yourself that the lie is the truth. "Dad," she said softly, "you've put yourself in a really bad spot." She slid the envelope across the counter toward the clerk. "I'm trying to help you, but you're making this impossible." The clerk stepped back, hands up. He didn't want any part of it. I picked up the envelope and turned it over, feeling the weight of it before I opened it. Inside, no surprise. A printed warrant for financial exploitation, elder neglect, and mental instability pending evaluation. All under my name. Laurel had filed it herself. I scanned the bottom and saw the signature of Sheriff Donnelly, a man who used to come by my garage for free tire patches when his cruiser was out of budget. "You filed me as incompetent," I said quietly, the words barely squeezing past my throat. Her eyes flickered, then steadied. "I had to. You've been acting erratic. Disappearing, moving money, calling lawyers. Because you tried to rob me blind," I snapped. The clerk froze. Even the hum of the old refrigerator seemed to stop. She tilted her head, studying me like I was a specimen. "Dad, you're tired. You're confused. Damon and I can take care of everything. You just need to sign the medical release form so we can get you evaluated and settled." Settled. That word. Like I was a bill to be squared away. I folded the warrant and slipped it back into the envelope. "You forged my name," I said. "You went to a notary, found someone crooked enough to witness a lie, and then you filed paperwork saying I'd lost my mind. Because you're proving that I'm right," she said, calm as a lake before the storm. "Dad, this isn't about money. It's about protecting you. Protecting me." I'd heard that tone before. It was the same one she used when she told me she was marrying Damon. He just needs someone to believe in him. Dad. I believed. Now here we were. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "You think you're clever, Laurel, but you overplayed it. You left fingerprints all over that POA. Francia Odell's already filed a dispute. Every form you touched is a live wire now." Her smile faltered, just a hair. But enough. That was the first crack. "Francia?" she repeated. I nodded. "And the sheriff you sweet-talked into signing this?" I tapped the envelope. "He's going to have a hard time explaining why he signed a false statement without verifying it." For a moment, something in her eyes wavered. Fear or guilt. Maybe, but she caught herself. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "You need help, Dad?" she said, stepping back toward the door. "If you come home with me quietly, we can fix this before it gets worse. If not," she tapped the screen, "they'll find you anyway." I turned to the clerk. "You saw her hand that to me?" He nodded, uncertain. "Sure did. Good. Keep that in mind when they come asking." Laurel sighed, exasperated. "Dad, please, don't make this ugly." "It already is." She froze halfway to the door, the air between us tightening. I could tell she wanted to say something. Maybe that she didn't want it to go this far, maybe that Damon had pushed her, but she didn't. Instead, she looked away, pressed the phone to her ear, and said into it, "He's here. Blue Meridian. Send them." Then she walked out into the noon glare, her silhouette framed against the glass like a ghost I didn't recognize anymore. I turned to the clerk. "Is there a back door?" He hesitated. "Out through the counting room, yeah. But, good. Forget I was ever here." By the time I slipped into the alley, sirens were already distant but closing fast. I ducked behind the dumpster, heart pounding harder than it had in years. Across the street, Laurel's car idled, driver's side window down, a familiar arm resting on the door. Damon, grinning, phone in hand. I hadn't been this angry since the day I buried her mother. But anger doesn't build strategy, it just burns it. So I waited, watched, and when the first cruiser pulled in front of Blue Meridian, I started walking the opposite direction, hat low, back bent, just another old man in a world that doesn't look at old men twice. By sundown, I was at the bus station in Millersford, 20 miles north. I bought a ticket to nowhere in particular, one of those rural routes that take 3 hours to cross 70 miles because they stop at every hardware store and half-dead diner on the way. As the bus pulled out, I watched the town fade through the window, a smudge of neon and asphalt and betrayal. That night, in a diner that smelled like grease and rain, I wrote Laurel a letter I didn't plan to send. "You want to protect me," you said, "but what you really want is to own what I built. You think I'll break quietly. You think I'll fade. But you've forgotten where you came from. You've forgotten what kind of man taught you to fight." And as I folded that letter, an idea came. A small one, sharp as a splinter. If Laurel wanted me declared incompetent, I'd give her a version of that story, but on my terms. She wanted a ghost? I'd become one. Because a ghost doesn't go to jail. A ghost doesn't pay debts. And a ghost can still watch. And so the real game began that night, with nothing but a bus ticket, a tin box, and a plan that would make Laurel wish she'd never learned how to forge a signature. The bus rocked me like a cradle and like a coffin, same slow rhythm, same hollow sway. I watched towns slide by, rusted signs, a Mennonite buggy, a boy dragging a fishing pole, as if they were frames in a cheap movie. I had nothing but the tin box and the letter I'd written and a head full of grudges that felt younger than my joints. There's a sweetness to being invisible when you're the one choosing to be. For once, I controlled the timetable. First thing I did in Millersford was find a payphone. They still exist in places that haven't yet learned to forget how to be private. I called Francia. She picked up on the second ring, no surprise. She likes the crackle of a new problem. I told her where I was and what had happened with the warrant and Laurel's little parade at Blue Meridian. "Don't go home," she said. "File's messy and the sheriff's on their side right now." "I won't," I said. "But I'm not hiding to be hidden. I'm hiding to see." She didn't like that. "See what? How far they go to make a grave look like a garden." She snorted. "Then play the ghost. I'll keep the lights on." I rented a room above a feed store because the clerk downstairs reminded me of a kid I used to teach to tune a lawnmower. Eager and clumsy and too trusting. I slid the tin box under the mattress and slept like a man who'd finally found a reason to be tired. Morning came in a wash of gray light and a bakery that smelled like yeast and diplomacy. I ate toast and listened to the town gossip like you'd listen to a weather report. It tells you what to expect in a week. Francia had already worked the county recorder and the bank. She'd arranged for Deputy Hawks to meet me at the diner under the table of confidential assistants. Hawks is the kind of cop who still carries a fountain of suspicion and a pocket square of decency. He looked at me like he wanted to believe me, and that was half the war. "You know Laurel?" he asked. "Know her?" I barked a laugh that surprised us both. "I raised her, taught her to change a plug and to read a ledger. Somewhere along the way she learned to use both for other people's ends." He chewed the fat on that a second, eyes darting to the door like a man who'd left his kettle on the stove. Hawks slid a photo across the table, the notarized POA, clear enough that you'd think the signature had been typed by a machine. "We pulled the notary's records," he said. "J.P. Gladwin? No such commission at the courthouse." "Figures," I said. "You ever seen Gladwin?" He shook his head. "We've got video from Blue Meridian. A woman, Laurel, hands you an envelope with a warrant. After she leaves, Damon calls in, asks for restraint. They've got an angle. Problem is proving the forgery between a family spat and a pattern of elder abuse." "Pattern? How's busting me twice in 1 week make a pattern?" I asked. "Because, Mr. Reeve," Hawk said, voice soft as a sermon, "you're not the first elder in this county who changed his mind about what to do with the house. The difference is that people see money and they see opportunity, and they make paperwork to suit. That was the point. The sort of people who forged a signature would also sign an affidavit to excuse the signature later. They always think they're cleverer than the law, and the law is patient. It takes its time." "So what's next?" I asked. Hawks tapped a pen against the napkin. "We keep you documented as competent," he said. "We get the recorder to lock the title. We subpoena Blue Meridian for any employee logs. And we find this Gladwin." He looked at me like he'd just given me a fishing rod and expected me to catch a salmon. "You'll have to help." "Help, right?" I said I'd help and felt the muscles in my face relax the way they do when you put on gloves before work. We spent the day laying breadcrumbs. Not for Laurel, no, that would be too pretty. But for Damon and whatever messy friends he kept in the background. Hawks made calls. Francia drafted motions that smelled like a courtroom and a battlefield at the same time. I called an old friend who ran a print shop in Pine Hollow and asked him to check his notary stamp orders. He promised he would, swearing on the memory of cold beer and pizza slices. That evening, the clerk from Blue Meridian called me with a little fuzz of fear in his voice. "Someone left a receipt," he stammered. "A wire transfer canceled. It was supposed to go to B. Meridian LLC, not Blue Meridian, and the routing number traces back to a shell in Tulsa." Tulsa. My head filled with maps I hadn't visited in 30 years, and with the knowledge that people who want to bury a man's name will rent addresses like motel rooms. They check in, they take the bed, and they leave you the keys. I began to think like a man who had nothing left to lose and everything left to reclaim. First, the notary. I took a bus back to Pine Hollow in the dead of night and walked to the county clerk's office, where the filing light glowed like the eye of a hawk. I had no right to be there, but sometimes rights are a set of doors and you just learn to pick the knob. The clerk was half asleep in her chair and woke up all the livelier when I mentioned Gladwin. "No record," she said. "But there was a transient who came through last month asking about notary work. Said he could handle a signature for a friend. We thought he was a con." Con. That sounded right. I left a description. Mid-50s, cheap cologne, spoke fast. Sounded like Damon's kind of recruit. The more I dug, the more the picture came into focus like an etching left in acid. Laurel and Damon had scouted the edges. A crooked notary, a county with sleepy recorders, a wire that hopped through shell companies, and a deputy's temper cheap enough to be bought with charm and a beer. But they hadn't planned for Francia to be a bulldog, and they hadn't planned for me to be a ghost with memory and teeth. On day 10 of my absence, I watched them make a mistake. They underestimated my grandson, which is almost always a mistake. He's a chip off the old block in ways I love and hate. Quick, stubborn, loyal to the bone. He'd come by the house to water the geraniums and found the storage lock open. My toolbox moved, a rag out of place. He thought it looked wrong, and his conscience is not the sort that can be advised to sleep. He'd seen Laurel visiting 2 days before, smiling too sweet, talking to the notary down at Charlie's, and he got curious. He started asking questions that sounded like trouble on a porch in August. Laurel panicked. People like her don't handle curiosity well. They handle control. She called Damon and made the kind of plans that men in suits make in parking lots, under the watch of sodium lamps and the smell of old motor oil. They decided to move faster, to cut all ties, to make me a problem that could be solved by sending me to an evaluation and then signing the house into a trust and auctioning the rest. They were in too much of a hurry. They left an envelope at the feed store with a copy of the POA and a note that said, "For safekeeping, don't open." That was their sin. Leaving a breadcrumb in a place where someone with a bad habit of helping old men might find it. My grandson found it. He didn't know who Gladwin was, but he knew greed when he saw it. He didn't tell me at first. Pride's a funny thing, it keeps you from offering help, even when you need it. But then he did. He showed it to me the way a boy shows a cat he found in a rain gutter. Half triumphant, half terrified. "Grandpa," he said, "is this legal?" I looked at the signature and felt my old life tightening in my chest like a fist. "Not yet," I said, "but it will be." We set a trap that night, simple as bait and sharp as a hook. I called Laurel through a blocked number, because you can still surprise the brave if you use old tricks, and left a message with my voice shaky and small. "Laurel," I said, "I can't do this anymore. I'll sign the papers. Tell Damon to come by tonight. There'll be whiskey and a check. Let's end this." I wanted them to hear desperation in my voice. I wanted Damon to smell victory. They took it. When Damon arrived, he brought 2 friends and a lawyer with no scruples and a suit that had been ironed in a machine that never heard of regret. They came to the side entrance like men who expect a prize. What they didn't expect was the room to be full of witnesses. Francia and Hawks were there, sure, but more importantly, so was a small crowd of neighbors who had seen the way Laurel smiled at expensive things and who had their own grudges. My grandson sat at the table and watched them like a hawk who had been denied a meal, and I sat in my rocker with a blanket across my knees and a flask of whiskey that smelled like courage. I let them think they had me. I let them swagger. I let them open their mouths and promise me boxes of cash and settlements, and no hard feelings. Damon's face filled with a confidence I recognized. The kind of confidence that comes from counting other people's boundaries instead of your own. He passed a paper across the table and smiled the kind of smile that doesn't mean anything unless it's polished in a mirror. "Sign here, old man," he said, "and we'll call it a day." I put down the pen. I looked at them all one by one, like a man taking stock of his harvest. Then I said 3 words that made the room stop. "Not without witnesses." They laughed. That laugh was their downfall. They were already celebrating a win they hadn't yet earned. And when they laughed, someone outside the window clicked a camera. They thought the flash was lightning. Damon turned, confused, and Laurel's smile froze mid-breath. The deputy stepped in first, camera still warm in his hand, followed by Francia with a folder of every forgery, every transfer, every lie they'd inked. Nobody spoke. I didn't need to. The papers, the warrant, the fake notary, everything they'd built on my name collapsed under its own greed. Damon was cuffed before he could invent a story. Laurel just stood there, trembling, realizing that she tried to bury me alive in paperwork and found herself trapped under it instead. When they let her out, she looked at me once, just once, and I saw the little girl who used to bring me bolts and call it helping. I almost pitied her. Almost. I went back to my chair, poured one last finger of whiskey, and listened to the night settle over Pine Hollow. Revenge, I've learned, isn't fire. It's patience, the kind that lets you watch the storm break, knowing you were the one who planted the thunder.